I'm Joe Lamp'l. When I created Growing a Greener World, I had one goal: to tell stories of everyday people, innovators, entrepreneurs, forward-thinking leaders who are all, in ways both big and small, dedicated to organic gardening and farming, lightening our footprint, conserving vital resources, protecting natural habitats, making a tangible difference for us all. They're real, they're passionate, they're all around us. They're the game changers who are literally growing a greener world and inspiring the rest of us to do the same. Growing a greener world, it's more than a movement, it's our mission. If I had a nickel for every bad piece of gardening advice I've received over the years, I'd be a rich man by now. But some people have gotten rich by doling out bad or iffy advice to people hungry for information to make their gardens better. Well, thankfully, we have better ways to get that information from sources that are trusted and tested. One person who has dedicated much of his academic career to such a purpose is Jeff Gillman, Ph.D. and instructor of horticulture at Central Piedmont Community College. When he's not writing or teaching or traveling the country speaking, he's usually researching about all those common household remedies that are often prescribed by self-proclaimed experts without concern for their consequences. Jeff's research and no-nonsense assessments have earned wide respect across the board, from academic peers to many devoted readers and fans. Jeff, one of the things I've always admired about you is your ability to cut through all the gardening chatter out there. You know as well as I do, there's a few people that have made a lot of money coming up with all these crazy concoctions for homemade fertilizers and pesticides. So what is it about you that prompted you to take on some of these claims through a scientific approach?
Well, when I first got my Ph.D. and became a professor, I had the opportunity to give a talk to a group of gardeners. And it was a talk about pesticides, and Joe, it was the best talk on pesticides you have ever heard. I mean, really, never heard a better one. And then, in the back of the audience, some guy raises his hand and says, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but what about a plug of chewing tobacco in a gallon of water? Won't that do the same thing? And I had no idea, and I kind of felt like a fool. Oops. Because, yeah, here I am, fresh Ph.D., you know, I'm supposed to know everything.
Right.
And I didn't have a clue.
Uh-oh.
So then and there, I decided that I would start to look into these household remedies and find out which worked. And for the remedies that there wasn't information in the books, well, I'd do the experiments myself.
Cool. Now, I've read your books, and you make claim to the gardening gurus out there as a lot of the people that come up with these ideas. What's your definition of a gardening guru?
Well, a gardening guru is usually a great gardener, fantastic gardener. But usually they let personal experience override research. And you know, I have to be honest with you, a lot of time their experiences are good and their experiences are very useful. But there's research out there too that can tell a little bit of a different story.
Mm-hmm. So what's your criteria as a researcher, academic researcher, that legitimizes some of these claims or actually debunks their validity?
Well, what you've got to do when you look at a claim or look at whether something works or not is you have to run a control. What that means is when you do an experiment, you can't just do an experiment on one plant. You have to do an experiment on many plants. And some plants you have to treat and some plants you have to not treat. And very often we see garden gurus trying something once, and if it works, they say it works, instead of trying it again and again and testing it over and over. And that's what you've got to do to make your research mean something.
And that's where you come in. That's the difference in all of it.
That's the difference, yeah.
Jeff, with all of your research, you've had the opportunity to see all kinds of crazy concoctions. Some work and some not so much. You stay away from them, right?
I try to.
What's one of the craziest ones that you've seen that actually works?
Well, one of the craziest ones that I saw is milk. I mean, who would think that milk would work for controlling diseases on plants? But having heard it, I had to try it.
Okay.
So mixed it up exactly as it was recommended. 1 part milk to 2 parts water.
I just happen to have some milk and some water here, so let's mix it up because I want to kind of spray this after we're through because I know it does work.
Well, let's give it a shot then.
Okay.
Let's grab our spray bottle.
All right.
And
so we're going to do 1 part milk.
1 part
Good
milk.
luck with that.
There we go.
Okay.
Looks good.
2 parts water.
2 parts water. It does not have to be too exact, just a nice rough estimate. A little bit more than that. How many roses do you have?
Enough, that'll work.
Great.
Okay, so now what's the agent that's causing this to be effective against disease?
Well, milk has in it a protein called lactoferrin. It's an antimicrobial protein, and it actually works against a wide variety of different microbes. The fungi that causes black spot, as well as bacteria, works great on a variety of garden problems. Works a little bit on powdery mildew too.
Excellent. Now, dish soap is one that we hear quite often is an effective agent not only for diseases but for pests too. Has a couple applications.
Yeah, and you hear about dish soap with good reason. Dish soap actually works really well. In fact, dish soap can work better than the insecticidal soaps that you buy at the garden center. What it does is it mixes oils and waters. And around every insect, there's a thin layer of wax, an oily wax. So what the dish soap is going to do is it's actually going to strip that oily wax off and dry the insect out.
Okay.
Now the problem is, it's always a problem.
Yep.
The problem is that it can also strip the waxes off of the leaves of your plants.
And you also have to use the right proportions too. So let's mix some of that up.
Let's
How much
do
do
that.
we use for, that's a gallon of water.
Okay.
And I have some measuring spoons right here.
Why don't you start with a tablespoon?
Okay.
If a tablespoon works, then there's no reason to add more if that knocks out your aphids. You're going to want to mix that up.
Okay.
Here's a spoon for you.
Now I'm looking for the fact that this is going to take care of the pests without defoliating my plants. That's the key.
Exactly.
Would I want to use more soap if it's not harming my leaves and makes it more effective on the pest?
Exactly.
Okay, so the soap is good for the pesticide, but the soap also has another property that helps it adhere to the surface of the leaves. When would you use that?
Well, soap is used quite a bit when you're mixing up other types of garden remedies. Specifically baking soda it's often used with.
Okay, so now we're using baking soda at this point with the soap to do what?
It's usually used for disease, powdery mildew in particular.
Okay.
You know, the thing is, back in the 1920s, they figured out that baking soda was actually pretty effective against powdery mildew. And baking soda is, in fact, effective against powdery mildew. Here's the thing. A couple years after they figured out that it was effective against powdery mildew, they figured out that it was not effective against black spot on rose. And yet, I read recommendations today
to use it for that.
Right, and you know what? Nothing has changed since the 1920s. It still does not work on black spot.
So we use the milk mixture for the black spot and we use the baking soda for the powdery mildew. Now, how much do we use here for the gallon of water?
Put another tablespoon of that right into the water.
More or less, give or take?
More or less.
Okay,
yeah.
good. Whoops, oops. All right, so we mix that in.
Yep, get the spoon and then that can be put right into the sprayer and sprayed out exactly the same way that you would apply that milk.
Now, what about some other pest control remedies? Because I brought some garlic and I brought some hot peppers. Both are pretty effective in the homemade remedy department.
That's right, and the hot peppers are actually from your garden, right?
They sure are.
Awesome.
Now, just to clarify, this is a repellent as opposed to a pesticide for killing the insects.
Exactly right. When you spray this on your plant, what you're hoping to do is chase insects away. You're not trying to kill any of them. Now, the first thing I want you to remember with these peppers is that they are loaded with capsaicin.
Yes, they are.
And capsaicin is dangerous.
The hot stuff.
Yeah. You know, we normally think about capsaicin burning your eyes or potentially your mouth. Look, some of these peppers are hot enough that if you touch them and squeeze them, they will actually raise blisters on your hand.
Wow.
Wear gloves. Be careful.
Yes.
Okay? Do as I say, not as I do.
Today. Okay.
Let's put, got a blender over here. So we're going to put about 2 cups, and we've got our measurement right here.
Right.
About 2 cups of hot peppers in there. Yeah. The smaller they are, the hotter they are.
Yes.
All right. That's about...
Is that good enough? One more?
That's about right. Okay. Now I'll fill this up. Again, about 2 cups of water.
So 1-to-1 ratio on this, roughly?
Roughly.
Okay.
We have a good seal. There we go. Now we have a cheesecloth covered.
Okay, all right.
So now it's dangerous, so I'm going to be careful with that. Now I know this looks like a really tasty smoothie. Don't be tempted. All right?
All right. But that liquid now is pure enough to go through a spray bottle.
Yep.
Without any of that residue clogging them. Okay, so that looks like it's going to be a great success. Garlic is another good one. Simple to make, it's readily available. How do we use it?
1 to 2 bulbs of garlic, 2 cups of water, grind them up together, and once again, we're talking about something that's primarily a repellent. The sulfur compounds in the garlic are going to repel the insects and hopefully do a great job for you. Once again, test it before you spray the whole plant.
That seems to be the recurring theme.
It is.
Come on in, sir.
Thank you very much.
You bet. You know, Jeff, one of the forms of pest control that no one seems to have an issue with are the beneficial insects. And you know, the thinking is, if some are good, more are better, right?
Yep.
So we plant those plants to attract those beneficial insects in here, but then, you know, the other thing we can do is we can buy them in the garden center. Not a bad idea, but maybe there's an issue with it?
Well, it's a real minor issue. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with bringing lady beetles into the garden, except that the lady beetles don't usually stay in the garden.
Oh.
See, the thing is, they came out of a refrigerator at the garden center, then they usually go to a refrigerator in your house, and they think that it's wintertime, that they're supposed to be dormant, they're supposed to be doing nothing. Then you bring them out into the sunlight, and the first thing they want to do is disperse, get out of here.
Spread their wings.
Exactly. So, very few are actually going to stick around here. Most are just going to go away. That's what they've been programmed to do.
Let's find out how I'm going to do.
Let's find
Will I
out.
get my money's worth or not? All right, there's a lot of them in. There they
And
go
there
already.
they go.
Wow.
Yeah,
We're just
they-
finding out that the top is off, and there they go. Holy smokes. Okay, so I guess the downside, or the worst case scenario, which is still not bad, is that these fly off and maybe they take out some bad guys in somebody else's garden.
Exactly. I mean, you know, there's nothing wrong with releasing these guys here. The question is just whether you get your money's worth.
Okay, so what would be an alternative where I have a better chance of getting a higher rate of return on my money?
Well, you can get a better rate of return on your money with green lacewing, for example. Yeah, I got one right there. Well,
You must be a pest.
they got me. They got me.
So green lacewing,
Yep, that's a good choice. And then there are a few others.
and you can get those online too.
Yep, exactly. Lady beetles are the easiest to find. If you're going to find something beside lady beetles, usually you have to search around online.
Gotcha. And you know, we can help you with that. We'll put some links on our website under the show notes for this episode. The website address, it's the same as our name. It's growingagreenerworld.com, and we'll have some links right there for you. Okay. Might as well try to get all of our money's worth out of here. Go boys, girls. Now, if we've heard it once, we've heard it 1,000 times. If we want to improve the drainage in our container, we need to add something to the bottom, whether it's small stones or marbles or styrofoam peanuts or maybe even crushed aluminum cans. We need to create that airspace at the bottom of the container so the water moves through more easily. Now, the real life application, does that really work? And rarely do we have a chance to see what goes on inside that container because usually it's something solid like this. But today, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to use clear containers. So I have two. They both have holes in the bottom. And in the first one, we're going to add some stone. That's typically what we would do. I'll add more than you might likely usually do to really illustrate the point. That may be the normal stopping point, but just for today, we'll go up to right about there. And then I'll add some soil to the top. A bit more there. Now in this one, we'll go straight soil. Nothing at the bottom for drainage. Okay. So these are our two simulated pots that we're about to plant. Now the first thing we need to do is put the water in there because that's what we want to see. We want to see the results of what happens to the water. So here we go. So fill that one and we'll fill this one. Maybe a little bit more in both. So now we'll let the water drain through for a few minutes, and then we want to see the results of where that water goes. So it's been just a couple minutes, and let's assess the results so far. Now the one where we added the stone to improve the drainage. Take a look at this. Now we have some air pockets here, but for the most part, this is saturated soil. The water hasn't moved through to the stones. And in this case, where we didn't add anything, all soil, look, the saturation point is way down here at the bottom. Now that's typical. The water will move through to that point where the drainage or the exit point occurs. In this case, it's all the way at the bottom of the container. Here, it's at the bottom of the first substrate level. Now the academic explanation for that is that water does not pass easily between two substrates of different pore sizes. In this case, the water is going to collect in that area that's denser, the soil. Now the real life or practical application of this, when we plant into an area where we've added things for the drainage, the roots are going to sit in an area where the soil is more saturated, and we don't want that because our plants can drown. Whereas in this case, where we added nothing, there's more area where the roots aren't sitting in saturated soil. That's what we want, more air space. That makes for a healthier plant. So the next time you want a healthier plant and improve the drainage, you don't need to do anything at all, just straight soil. You know, a lot of the times the reason these homemade ingredients are so popular is because the items that you use to make them with are readily available around the house, such as Epsom salts and vinegar and baking soda. But at the same time, although you can easily get to them, they're not always the safest things to use in your gardening applications.
That's right. And you know, instead of giving you some academic answer, let me tell you about an experience I had a couple of weeks ago. So I'm out in my backyard spraying some horticultural vinegar on some weeds. Horticultural vinegar is 20% acetic acid instead of your normal 6 that you'd find in a white vinegar or an apple cider vinegar. So I'm spraying this vinegar on the weeds, and out of the corner of my eye, in an area that I just sprayed, I see this weird hopping. So I reach over and find out that what I'd sprayed was a frog. I yell for my wife to bring me a glass of water to wash him off. Less than a minute, she brings me the water. I wash him off, but it was too late. The frog was already dead. If we're going to use something from the cabinet as a pesticide, then we have to treat it as a pesticide. When we're doing this, we're certainly using that product way out of line with the way it was ever intended to be used, and we have to appreciate that.
Well, and one of the things that you're fond of doing is comparing the Extension Service as the way to bridge the gap between the scientific research, the academic research, and the consumer, getting that information to them.
That's right. For 15 years, I was an extension specialist. Before I ever got into extension, though, I worked with a guy. He was my mentor, Dan Horton from the University of Georgia. And he broke extension down to one simple thing. Extension is the delivery of research-based information to people that can use it. And you know, that's what I've tried to do throughout my career, and what the Extension Service does still today. If you've got a problem with your plant, the first place that you should go is your state Extension Service.
Trusted, tested information that's readily available. That's exactly what you want.
You got it.
With access to so much information, there is no need to remember it all, especially when you search for the why behind everything you do when it relates to your plants and garden. And never settle for unexplained recommendations. Your plants deserve more, and so do you. If you like what you saw today, you can check out our website under the show notes for this episode. The website address is the same as our name. It's growingagreenerworld.com, and there is so much more information there as well. I'm Joe Lamp'l. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you back here next time for more Growing a Greener World. Here we go. 3, 2. Now, just to clarify, though, this is a repellent as opposed. The unibrow is coming through. Stop it. Well, it's when I look at you. When I really look at you, it's
just a funny looking guy. I know.
When you're ready. Ready? So I'm going to do this without looking at you. 3. Ready?